Welcome to the second edition of the Mobility Lounge live from Berlin. We're here at Porsche Consulting in the Innovation Lab. This terrace, what a view, and our show, what a lineup. I'm looking forward to the keynote speaker and to all the panelists. The topic will be how will new services disrupt mobility and transportation, and what if the customer decides what he or she wants and not the companies that provide mobility in the first place? We need to talk to mobility and transportation experts and stakeholders. Let's go. And your host is already here, the Executive Director Mobility at Porsche Consulting, Federico Magno.
What a pleasure, Phil. Hi.
Great to see you, Federico.
It's great to see you again.
It's great to be here in such a format that actually the panelists can be here with us and it's not purely digital anymore. What's the plan for today?
So first of all, I would like to say that it is a pleasure to be again on the road and also in Berlin. That is a wonderful city and extremely future-oriented. Second, it's also great to be in this wonderful office of Porsche Consulting. And more than that, we are located in our innovation lab. So actually the perfect setting, Phil, to discuss about the future of mobility. And, I would like to frame, if you allowed me, to frame the discussion starting with the fact that I would like to spend a warm welcome to all the panelists and keynote speakers that are here physically today, which is a great. So we are using a hybrid setting, but also, and therefore is important to spend a warm welcome to all the participants that are taking part to the Mobility Lounge via remote access, sitting in front of their screens. And third, if you allowed me to invest 60 seconds in that, why I'm particularly happy. I'm particularly happy due to the fact that we chose the title that is using 4 keywords that for me personally are really very important. Let's look together on the title. When customers decide how new services disrupt mobility. You know why I'm happy, Philip? Because the first word is customer. So this shows the importance, the pillar values of thinking starting from the customer and putting the customer at the center of our actions. Second, a word that I like extremely is deciding. Deciding means choosing. And let me show you that. This is the weapon that everyone can use to choose. Yeah, for 20 years, people were accustomed to choose with their feet and moving away from a service or from a company. Now, the disruption is enormous. You can choose and decide just using the fingertip, and therefore, speed and reaction speed is very important. Third word, service. So we are arriving in a world in which assets are no more the key element in talking about mobility, but service and customer orientation, as I said to you just a few seconds ago, is the key. And at the end, the most important future-oriented word, that is disruption. So many counterparts are saying and framing with me the future of mobility, discussing about disruption. Disruption is a danger. Disruption is something that we have to take care of. In my understanding, disruption is positive and is a synonym for chances. And this is why today I'm particularly happy.
Mm-hmm. You've split the panels into two. One is about goods and one is about people.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
I strongly defend the decision. I know that you are not happy with that, but I do believe, let me try to make a front loading. I do believe that at the end of our discussion this evening, we will come to the conclusion that person and goods are having same challenges, we can frame same solution, perhaps we can use same algorithms or solution based on data can be similar, but we will discuss that at the end. At the beginning, I was extremely pushing for the decision to split them because we have to be fully aware that people and goods are two different things.
And we will be discussing and analyzing, of course, the panels that we're going to have today. And you're sort of the expert, like in a football game.
Yes,
and I'm very happy that you're going to be
I'm going to write down everything, and I will share with you and with all the participants my personal takeaway and receipt for the success coming from the daily discussion.
Looking forward to that. And also, of course, you have invited one of the most renowned speakers and experts on mobility worldwide.
Exactly.
He is a professor in St. Gallen. He is the head of the Institute for Mobility. He's also a visiting professor at LSE and Stockholm School of Economics. What can we expect from Professor Andreas Hermann?
A lot of good things. So this is great. It's a personal honor to have him here. And what I really like is his point of view, considering the mobility not as a sum of silos or a sum of physical access, but Professor Hermann is considering mobility as an ecosystem. And secondly, in my understanding, his intake is focused on the fact that macro cities are the real innovation engines for the mobility of the future. And so my personal first question for him will be, is it going to be the same also in a post-COVID-19 world?
Okay, I will ask that in the panel. He's going to be in the first panel, of course.
Exactly.
He has published 15 books, more than 250 scientific articles. And before he's in the panel, we will hear his keynote. So welcome with us, Professor Hermann.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. And imagine we were able to materialize Henry Ford, and he was here tonight. We know he's a tech enthusiast, and the question is, which products would excite him today? Of course, the iPhone. I think that's no question. Probably the Boeing 747, of course, the fMRI technology, but what about cars? Would cars catch his attention? Would he be thrilled by cars as we see them in our roads? Probably the answer would be by Henry Ford. Well, cars haven't changed much within the last 120, 130 years. What the heck have you been doing in all those years? When Henry Ford set up the production site near Detroit, when he started producing cars, he had to care for everything by himself. He owned copper mines in Michigan, rubber plants in Brazil. He had horses and ships to transfer the raw material to the production site. Over time, more and more specialized suppliers and dealers came into the game, and the value chain changed a little bit, but it hasn't changed dramatically within the last decades. Now we are in a phase where this changes radically. Let me try to explain this by focusing on two developments. The business model of the auto industry has always focused on ownership. Today we learn a lot in many domains in life that things can be borrowed, basically. We see rental models, leasing models. We do see a lot of pricing models coming up all over the place concerning various products. So there's no need to purchase products anymore. A second dimension shows us that the driving task is shifted more and more from the human to the machine. So more and more technology comes into play to replace the human driver. By connecting these two dimensions, we end up, let's say, Uber 2.0, meaning self-driving cars, electric cars belonging to a fleet, organized and managed by a traffic control center. That can be part of the future in mobility. It has consequences concerning the value chain. Here's just some different layers how the value chain of the future could look like in the automotive industry. The base is basically the self-driving system. It can come from various tech players such as Mobileye. This technology goes into vehicles, into self-driving vehicles. We all know that Waymo is very famous for testing those devices. We see fleet and teleoperators such as Sixt and Uber, Lyft. And we do see various mobility platforms coming up all over the globe. Bestmile, Moovit, Dravi are just examples. And more important than ever is the driver experience. I will pick up this idea in a minute. And we definitely will see players coming into this industry from very different domains. Here's just an example from Starbucks. Recently, Starbucks announced that it will set up EV chargers along the road going all the way from Denver to Seattle. So every 100 mile, a EV charger, and while charging the car, people can take a cup of coffee and eat a cake in the Starbucks outlet. Well, in my perspective, the car will be just one piece of the overall puzzle. So far, it was the overall puzzle. But in the new world, in the new mobility world, it is just one piece, and many other modes of transportation will come in and building basically a chain of transportation. And this chain of transportation is basically managed by a platform, and the interface is organized by various apps. We know all these apps from Moovit. It's just one example here. So we will see a combination of different modes of transportation. And even if we are hesitant to enter in this world, as we were hearing in the intro, a lot of cities will definitely force us, will push this way into this intermodal world of mobility. And here is just an example from Mobileye and NIO. There's a combination basically of software technology coming from Mobileye and the hardware coming from NIO, and the fleet operator is basically Sixt or Moovit. So we can take the app and order a self-driving taxi. Later this year in Munich and many other cities will pick up this technology within the next 24 months. So overall, we will run definitely into a world of mobility, which will cover a whole lot of different players. Everybody is contributing a specific piece to the overall mobility puzzle. And I was focusing especially on the driver experience. We know roughly that we all spend 400 billion hours per year behind the steering wheel. That's a lot. And if we assume that each car is occupied by 1.5 passenger on average, so we have 600 billion hours in the car. And that's exciting because we can evaluate these 600 billion hours by GOP. If we take the average GOP, it's between 2 and 5 US dollars. If we just pick the western part of the world or the developed country, it's a little higher, but we will definitely end up with a huge sum. And that's basically the cake which is out there. And the reason why Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, Google, and Netflix, all those companies are very much interested in self-driving technology. So the race is basically on. The race is on between the manufacturers and the tech companies to entertain people and to gain a certain portion of this huge cake. And everybody, every side is basically arguing, hey, we dominate the market. The OEMs argue we are the gatekeepers. We decide which company can get in and at which price. Whereas the technology company argue, hey, everybody in a car has his or her smartphone, and I don't need a car manufacturer to get into a shuttle or a bus or a car. So the race is on, and it's not yet decided who will win this race. Now let's turn the attention to the delivery system. A lot of people would argue, especially in larger cities, that last mile delivery is broken. There's a lot of data supporting this hypothesis. We know that many department stores are supported 10 times a day, pharmacies up to 20 times a day. So we have a lot of traffic, incoming traffic, with a few and small parcels. We do see a tremendous growth rate in online delivery, not only due to Corona, but accelerated due to the pandemic. And if we consider this path, we will definitely see an increase in traffic because many mail order companies are already argue same-day delivery. That creates a lot of congestion inside city. There's a nice study out there by the World Economic Forum showing us that if we continue this path, we will definitely see a lot more vans out there, a lot of more trucks entering cities. We will see an increase in congestion and emissions, and we will definitely see a lot of cities and areas which got stuck in traffic. So what can be done? What needs to be done? One option could be that hub-and-spoke systems are established, hub-and-spoke delivery systems. That means that the trucks deliver their freight to a specific distribution center, and from this distribution center, the last mile delivery is done these days by bicycles, but in the future by self-driving cars or even by drones. And these self-driving devices are organized by a traffic management control center, so that the ways are optimized and that the carriage is basically optimized, so that the amount of traffic can be significantly reduced. There are already pilot studies out there in various cities, various areas, and I'm very optimistic that this could be one way of reducing the amount of traffic. Here's just an example, a concept car from Rinspeed, which is a design company in Switzerland. And this company comes up with the idea of having a people mover, a people shuttle during the day, and a freight shuttle basically to deliver parcels during the night. So putting all these ideas together, I think we are in a good position. I'm very optimistic that this technology can change the world for the good, that we can improve the quality of life in cities, that we can reduce congestion, that we can reduce emission, that we can reduce fatalities in our streets, and that we can reduce the land use. So we talk about 30% of a city which is used for traffic infrastructure. So I'm very optimistic, I'm very positive that, this technology help us to make life, especially in cities, much better. And so I cannot agree more to the statement of Elon Musk. He's arguing that over a long period of time, we moved from one sad problem in traffic management to the next. Now it's time for the big step, for the big movement to use all these wonderful technology and to change the traffic situations radically. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to our discussion and for some insightful questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Herrmann. And please join us on this spot here for our first panel. Thank you and welcome also to Jennifer and Monica. Well, let's start with you. She has spent nearly 20 years in the automotive industry, including Ford, BMW and Porsche. She has in-depth knowledge from the industry on all kinds of topics related to mobility, but also to smart cities. She holds a master in chemical engineering and a PhD in chemistry. And she says electrification of cars is not the end of the game. Micromobility must be increased from today 1% to 10%. Welcome, Dr. Jennifer Dunks.
Thank you.
Jennifer, we've heard a lot about mobility trends from Professor Herrmann now. Now it's over to you for a person being responsible for the strategic investments in energy for transport and mobility at InnoEnergy. Your platform helps startups create businesses that are both innovative and sustainable. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the next big thing in your ecosystem. What's coming next?
Sure, would be glad to. So, at InnoEnergy, we're all about investing in new technologies that can create a real impact. And as you just saw from the presentation from Andreas, he was just talking at the end a little bit about the impact that we would all have on the GDP, for example, when we're not all driving our cars and stuck in congestion. And of course, fitting all together with this is electrification and new form factors, for example, with what we can see in urban logistics, but also the movement of people. And we also recently did a study where we looked at exactly this point of if we had just a nominal amount of the relevant amount of kilometers traveled that are less than 6 kilometers in our city, so maybe 10% or so of those short trips for people and goods, and they're done by a different form factor than the car, for example, or a truck for a delivery truck, what kind of impact? And for example, the numbers we came up with were more than 30 million tons of CO2 could be saved, about so much space, the GDP, et cetera, and all the jobs that could be created. About 1 million jobs could be created, both direct and indirect. And so we're passionate, I guess, about supporting these innovations that can create a real impact in our cities. And we believe that with the current technologies, a lot of it's already there. It's now just about how do we implement it and really realize it in our cities.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And now to the gentleman who is live with us remotely from Switzerland. He's the Agile Leader Incubation and Projects at SBB, the Swiss Federal Railways, you know, the ones that are always on time. He's been with them for more than 7 years now. And since 2019, he's heavily involved with new mobility. How open are the conservative Swiss when it comes to something new? Let's ask him. Patrick Sorg, welcome.
Welcome.
Patrick, just 1 second. I know from Zurich, for example, you arrive there with the regional train, then the tram is already there or the bus to take you to your final destination. Everything looks as if nothing has to be changed. So why do you need to work on intermodal mobility in a country and city where everything is perfect? Let's keep it that way.
Yeah, you're right. And so the public transportation system really works pretty well in Switzerland. But of course, Andreas also mentioned it. I think the first and last mile, also in Switzerland, are the major problems we have to solve. And I think with a mass system, a multimodal system, we are able to give customers the possibility to use different modal options, modal mobility options, just to cover the last mile and have a real alternative to driving by car. And I think here we really need to work on, even in a good transport system in Switzerland.
Okay, so let's see later on whether the Swiss are really open for it. Now, just across the Swiss border is where she has the power to change the way we move about. She's the head of new mobility at the NVBW, which is the regional transport system in the southern German region of Baden-Württemberg. She says about herself she is future-oriented and open-minded. She has profound expertise in leadership and management with a strong focus on sustainability and change management. She says, rethinking mobility is not business as usual, and we need to consider mobility holistically. So, welcome to the new mobility enthusiast, Monika Burkhardt.
Thank you.
Monika, you've been all over the world. You've worked really almost everywhere from what I could see in your CV. Now, how far behind is Germany when it comes to commuting, when it comes to moving from A to B, and how does your open data platform work and help there?
Well, I think we Germans, and probably also the Swiss, we're quite good in standards. We are used to, we know how it works. We were discussing before the
backstage,
before the event started, and I think it's quite the same with our workplace right now. We were used to standard office, or depending on the job, traveling a lot and office, and now we have office, mobile working, we have home office, we have train office, we have so many. Hybrid office. This is a hybrid event. So we have so many. So we have to really rethink and to really find new ways how it works, and what I think this is a big impact. You were talking about the impact, a big impact to our quality of life, because everybody of us gained a lot about we learned a lot, and this is the same on the streets.
And maybe a good chance right now,
Definitely.
what you say. Just, it changed how we thought about work, but now why can't we take this opportunity and change how we think we're going to move? Because what Andreas also you presented was the increase in e-commerce and all of this, and we know we have this hyper-local mobility more, so I think...
Definitely.
Yeah.
But then I come to the data.
Yes, of course.
If you have all these different forms of different modes, they need to link to each other. And this is what we do in Baden-Württemberg with the open data platform, mobility open data platform. So we provide, as state of the Baden-Württemberg, we provide the data ecosystem to share data, open data.
Mm-hmm. But how open is it really? Professor Hammer?
This is open.
Okay. You just talked about this conflict between OEMs and platforms. I mean, many mobility ideas come from clever people and think tanks, but once they're out there, there are many copycats who copy what you did and also put their platforms on top of this. How can we solve this problem, basically?
So far, the mobility industry produces standalone products. Autos are standalone, trains are standalone, buses, you name it. And in this new world, we have an ecosystem. It works only when everybody contributes. And that's what we need to learn. That's what we need to learn in Switzerland and in Germany, because there was no need to learn this throughout the history of the automotive industry or the train industry. And I think that's definitely one of the challenges. It's a cultural shift, a cultural challenge which we need to tackle here.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be the customer's decision at the end of the day. Do you think those platforms will win eventually? I mean, against conservative railway systems, for example?
I mean, I think what will end in the end is convenience, right? So whoever comes out with the most convenient solution for us to move around, they will win. And I think just to add on to your point though, there's these individual kind of silo solutions like the car or public transport or whatever, but then what irritates me is that even in one form factor, let's say kickboard scooters, couldn't we just aggregate all of them, right? I know they also want some brand autonomy as well, but it's now we even have multiples in one slot that you would then need multiple apps for just even one mode of all these modes that you showed on your thing. So I think we could, there's a lot of opportunity to try to aggregate this a little bit. And one point that I'm quite passionate about in the work that we do, where we see a big opportunity, is also leveraging the synergies between the movement of people and the movement of goods. And you showed that with the Rinspeed example as well, but we should be using a shared infrastructure, we should be using shared charging, and all of this also to leverage and bring down the operational costs.
Mm-hmm. We should pick one city in Germany or in Switzerland and test all new technology, because we have so many single solutions throughout the country. Yeah. That doesn't help us. So we need one city. And if I was a minister of transportation here in Germany, I would pick one middle-sized cities and just rebuild it from scratch
and then
with
make
all
sure
new
they
technology.
Use Monica's open data platform, because
exactly.
That's actually part of it, right? If they're not all connected and there's not one kind of central thing and the data's not shared, then we also run into like operational excellence challenges if we can't do that.
Patrick, how open is the Swiss railway system, and how open is also the government in terms of like opening up your data and let platforms have your data?
Yeah, they actually going into the right direction. They just opened with some new regularities the sharing of data. So we, as a railway undertaking, we have to open up our data to other suppliers. So there's a lot coming. And as a representative of a railway, I strongly believe that multimodality is the future.
Mm-hmm. And Monica, you're pretty close to politics in your job. How open are the politicians as well in like pushing these ideas forward? Like Professor Hermann said, like let's just choose Mannheim as one of the cities. Maybe
we can. We should go there if we can scratch Mannheim from the ground. We'll see, but because they are quite. It's always already structured, and maybe. No, but just generally speaking, there's a big open data strategy of the land of Baden-Württemberg, for example, which is really going forward, bringing forward, building up this platform with really open data, and to make innovation possible, and to provide this platform without particular interests for everybody, and to really give others the possibility to build up new services. But there must be some restrictions in terms of data protection, etc. And they don't want American companies to come in. Or I mean, for sure, because you always have these. Still, it's also about trust, of course. Data is about. It's not only the business side, but it's really about trust, and so you have to convince that it makes sense, and that it has an impact on the cities, on attractive cities. You're talking to a lot of startups as well, Jennifer. How depressive must it be to have restrictions sometimes from above? Yeah, I mean, definitely, but I think what you were addressing with Monica is really important, because the cities have such a role to play in all of this, where they can really shape how they want their cities to look, and how the transfer for the last mile, the first mile to the other cities in the country could look. So they have so much, I think, chance right now, or opportunity with this whole topic. And I think one thing, and we were talking about this also backstage earlier, was
one topic with the data is the associated monetary streams. And so what we need to do is that if you do open data platforms or all this data sharing where some things can be at risk for companies to lose portions of the revenue because they use the data in a different way, then we need to level the playing field so that these companies can earn revenue or have a even playing field. We talked about the topic of like just access to land in a city, right? And what does a parking spot cost, 30 euros a year? And if you can leverage this and you can offer this to some of these other types of solutions and make the playing field more level, then maybe they're also willing to lose a little bit of data or lose a little bit of revenue on data streams.
Mm-hmm. I'm not so optimistic because Germany has a lot to lose. We are world leader in the old mobility world. Mm-hmm. We have the best auto manufacturers worldwide. We have well-established mobility behavior within society, and everything is at stake right now. And we have to give up a lot, and the new world is not yet clear. Mm-hmm. We do not see the business models. So the auto industry does not know yet where the money comes from in the future. So there's a lot of hesitation within the industry, within politics, and even within consumers. So that's why I do see a lot of these projects, not in Germany, but in Israel, in Singapore, in South Korea, and at some other places. But I think we need a push here. We need politics making the pace, bring the players together. Otherwise, it will not work.
Or show what we gain by all
this.
Yes,
exactly.
This is what we, because if you think, Philip, maybe, what comes to your mind if you talk about, or if you imagine attractive cities? How do they look?
Well,
what's there?
What's there?
And then think one step further, what data is there behind backstage, for example?
Sure, I'm a big fan of the Copenhagen city planner. So for me, the city centers must be like a living room of the city, and no more companies in there. But that's just my opinion. Patrick, what about Switzerland? When will you have a pilot city in Appenzell?
Yeah, in Appenzell it will probably take a while. But what we have seen, especially for example with our project which we run with UMove for a couple of years, where we work closely with urban cities like Zurich, Basel, and Bern. We really have seen that the combination of mobility options is really a great opportunity for the customers. And of course the big issue is still the acquisition part, so that we can also use kind of mass platforms for to come, for example, to Appenzell. But I think this needs development, that's for sure.
Yeah, how much are there thoughts also about like the little countryside towns, or is it always going for big cities now, these ideas? Because I always feel that if you live somewhere in the Schwäbische Alb, then people tend to think, well, until I can do car sharing, it takes like 20 years.
Of course, I mean, the question is how your ways per day. So there are several ways which are that short that you can maybe have another option than only the car at this time. And for many, you have the car. So it's not there. It's really, when I saw the title of our event today, when customers decide, I thought we have to start before customers decide. So we have to increase the options. We have to increase you said that, like you showed before, the different modes to bring mobility as a service together. Mm-hmm. There, we have to start there.
Surprisingly, we exclude many people from mobility, even in Germany. It's 6-7% of people who are disabled, having no access to mobility. In underdeveloped countries, it's up to 30%. And mobility is very important to reach out to jobs, to education, to social activities. And we have to consider mobility not just moving from A to B, but it's fundamental for taking part in society. That's why it is such a big challenge for us to make everybody mobile. I think that should be the job of politicians. And for example, for the countryside, autonomous driving could help a lot, bringing people to bus stations, to subway stations, and connect them to the social world.
Yeah, and as Monica said, you have to have the options first. You have to know what's out there until the customer can decide. What are the options that are innovative and that people will see in the next years to come?
I mean, so what we've been really interested in and focused on in the last couple of years is all the new different form factors. And so if you really look at all the different ways and different use cases of how people and goods need to travel in our cities, it's quite diverse. And you can, at the end of the day, you want the most efficiency, right? So the right efficiency for moving people, and same with goods. And you don't need the same product for moving groceries as you do for delivering a pizza. Yeah, and so trying to imagine and then leverage these new different form factors plus a built-in infrastructure that supports low operational costs, I think is we have this. My pain point is not that we don't have the solutions. I mean, autonomous driving, yeah, it's still not 100% here, but it's on its way. But we have a lot of solutions. We have a lot of technology, and what I think we don't have is the infrastructure. So I don't know about you guys during COVID, where you live, but I saw in the city that I live in, which was Stuttgart, they did repurpose some of the streets. And as soon as they did it, I see bikers there. I see bikers there who were never there. They could never be anywhere because there wasn't an infrastructure to be on. So I would like to see more and more of these commitments from the city to build safe infrastructure to allow for those products that are, frankly, pretty much ready to then be used. And what you said, Andreas, is I think we just have to deploy this stuff, right? I mean, we have to now use it so that then the people, the citizens, the companies in logistics can see the benefit.
So maybe we do one last round. Maybe you could start, Patrick, if you had a wish for something that could happen within the next few months that could really change something in your work, in the way you want to move forward. What would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one wish that I have is that we really look at a holistic approach. Right now, a lot of cities, a lot of companies, platform operators, they really look for their specific situation. And I think in order to get the whole and to get the whole benefit out of mass, I think we need to collaborate. And that's probably my biggest wish. And I think only that's the way we can make it happen.
Yeah, and Monica, also collaborate across borders, so you could get in touch, right?
Yes, collaborate, definitely. Shall I sort your think about the wish? Bring forward, go forward, and really orientation about the future and not which was yesterday. So completely start and go forward in all directions and think out of the box.
Disruption everywhere, Jennifer.
I mean, I think parts of this were talked about today, but it's also part of our mindset. It's part of kind of this ingrained behavior that we all have, or expectations on mobility. And I think in order to kind of make the next step, I wish we could take some risks. Because we actually, there's a lot of questions to answer, and also leave room in there that we're probably going to have to reiterate this a little bit, right, until we get the right solution. But we just have to start somehow, like collaborate all this part together, but take some risks.
Mm-hmm. Take risks, Professor Herrmann?
My wish is that cities increase the pressure on the industry, for example, by saying no privately owned cars inside the city by 2030, for example, to make sure that the industry transforms itself, because at the end of the day, it's not only about transportation, it's also about jobs. We need to make sure that the good jobs remain here.
And we'll have new jobs.
New jobs, exactly.
Definitely new job profiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit worried about the taxi drivers, aren't you?
Yeah, that's part of the game, that there is transformation, and that means also job transformation.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much to the whole panel. It was very interesting, very lively, and I will now analyze this with our expert, Federico Magno, who is now going to join me. So thank you very much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you very much. So, Phil, I'm back.
So, Federico, I'm glad you're back
Look at
because
that.
I need your expertise here.
Yes.
What did you think? What were the main outcomes?
First, I would like to tell you that was a very interesting and fruitful discussion. I was really able to write down many takeaways. And if you allow me, I would like to share that with you and with all the participants also joining from remote. And due to the fact that I'm a consultant, I was writing down a structure in order to provide you a to-the-point summary for what we just heard. Can I start?
Please do.
Give me green light. So the first takeaway is the importance of thinking not in silos and not in assets, but in a sort of layer logic and layer models. Okay, so this is, in my understanding, the first key takeaway that we can agree is important for the future. And also, quoting Jennifer, starting not with physical assets and going up with the services and digital twins, but really starting the layer logic from an infrastructure point of view. So we framed that many times during the discussion. Why this layer logic is important to me? Because it's actually a roadmap that we can give to our counterparts, to all the companies acting in the mobility sector, to understand strategic challenges and therefore also identify future possible profit pool that need to be exploited. So again, this is the link between what we said at the end, company, they have also to make money out of it. And therefore, the logic of layer together with profit pool can be a really added value. Second, probably they already spoiled the end of the launch, but I took an extremely strong point of view from our panel that there will be a lot of potential in seeing synergy between people and goods. Do you remember you asked me at the beginning why we are cutting it? Because we were willing to provoke the answer. So this is exactly what we reached. People and goods can share, we agree on that, assets and infrastructure. And in doing that, we reach a much higher level of ecological sustainability, and we give back to everyone also valuable time. But still, Phil, the central issue is how can we organize the first and the last mile delivery. We saw that very clearly framed also from our guest from Switzerland. Third point, can I go? The importance of open data, because the data are the engine of the future improvement in terms of customer-centric service and integrated mobility. And therefore, as a consequence, Phil, the key role of the legislator. The colleagues used words like regions, cities, but for me is the key takeaway, the legislator has to act in order to provide the right platform, the right ecosystem to create an integrated mobility and transportation.
Yeah, that was for me also quite interesting to see that there are limitations for the private economy because that's politics.
Yes, but we have to understand, and this is also something that I would like to stress. It is my personal view on the topic, that it's clear that there are different perspectives and interests among the player in the mobility ecosystem. And to frame it even better, companies, cities, institutions, and users, they have probably, at the beginning, contrary interest. Nevertheless, the major issues is to try to solve that dichotomy and create a win-win-win-win situation. And therefore, probably the key closing note that I would like to share with you all is there is an urgency to think big. And not only big, to think big, easy, fast, and also, as the colleagues just framed, to take risk. And if we can do that, we can frame a better future.
And also, of course, risks means be disruptive. And they didn't talk about flying drones, flying e-scooters, or anything like that. It was actually quite simple, but there has to be an absolute intention also from the politicians to give way and give the possibility to start something.
Yes. I was expecting exactly like that, so it's not a surprise to me because everyone will be fascinated by the discussion about flying cars, drones, and beam-up Scotty and science fiction activities. Nevertheless, if we are able just to make the step toward shared data and not think in assets but in integrated layers and in ecosystem, then we can make for the final customer a huge step forward. And I make a huge appeal to conduct that test.
Yeah, and I was very happy that we had a few elements of transportation of goods in my panel as well. So thank you very much, Federico. We will see each other again after the second panel, but the gentlemen are already lined up. And so, yeah, let's start our panel number 2.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Federico. Please, gentlemen. Off you go. And I will quickly introduce you so everybody knows who's here. So, let's start with you. Before moving to DPD Germany in February 2020, so immediately before the pandemic, he also managed the hub of competitor DHL in Leipzig and also worked on the retailer side as director operations at Amazon. Most recently, he was CEO of the logistics service provider Fiege in Switzerland. And with this CV, he should be further advancing the business of DPD. Welcome, Erik Malitzke, CEO of DPD Deutschland GmbH. He also says that door-to-door integration of mobility and value-adding transportation services are becoming reality. And yeah, let's hear about this. You have been in leading logistics positions for a total of over 17 years. And in the last couple of years, I have experienced that me as a customer, I always really want to know where my parcel is. I really actually want to see when it will be delivered. Is that the same also for goods? And do customers like me get on your nerves?
No, actually, it's the challenge we need because we are serving an industry which far too quick became a commodity. And all the technological developments were not implemented instantly. So it's now the time of the big tech inventions to actually take room in our industry. And yes, you can track your shipments online with DPD, and you can also do it as a sender or to be consignee, of course.
Perfect. And then we come to you. He is the Dean of the Faculty Business and Law at the Frankfurt University of Applied Sciences. He teaches the subjects of logistics and production. His key research topic is logistics and mobility in the areas of urban logistics, air freight, and digitalization. He teaches and performs research at the House of Logistics and Mobility Holm at the Frankfurt Airport. Welcome, Professor Dr. Kai Oliver Schocke.
Good afternoon.
Professor Schocke, the logistics providers like DPD, they need to do so much nowadays to satisfy their customers. Do you see an advantage for disruptive business models here? I mean, is there a chance?
I think the CEP providers do a great job, especially nowadays. We see increasing rates of parcels per day, per week, per year. It's we have a rate of 10% more parcels every year, and I think they do a great job, really a great job. We see a couple of companies like Gorillas, for example, who supply us with all kind of goods, food especially, and that's a different kind of business model. We heard in the previous round that they talked a lot backstage. We did it also, and we found out, or we came to the result that these kind of companies which drive another business model, that they burn a lot of money, and but we have serious logistic companies like DPT, for example, who really do their business. They know what to do, and therefore they will be successful in the future, hopefully.
I told them not to talk too much backstage, but so they did. Now over to you. You know, talking of smaller and more agile logistics providers, it was a sensation when on Wednesday, 9th of March, at the premiere of the new Volkswagen ID. Buzz, one of these vehicles on stage was branded in the colors of a new startup and also had their logo on it. Suddenly, people could see the name Cito. What is Cito? The idea behind the spin-off from Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles to better connect customers and courier services. And the gentleman up on stage now has a lot of experience in this field, and surprisingly, Cito's aim is not to sell more commercial vehicles. So what is the intention? Let's ask him, co-founder and CEO Dr. Gregor Stock.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, of course, we were all super happy and proud in our company that Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles decided to use our branding on their car on the world premiere of the ID. Buzz Cargo. But also they showed with that the importance of transport as a service in their future strategy. So as you might know, besides their car business, 3 pillars are important in the future strategy, which is autonomous driving, mobility as a service, and transport as a service. And we at Cito are the part in transport as a service. So we're a software company. We're not selling cars, and we're not producing cars, correct? We have business customers with a need for time-critical transports to get connected directly with the executing transport partners. That is important for us, and here to provide the best customer journey possible. And for us, it's important to not only have the customer in the focus of our activities, but also the transport partners, the executing drivers, because we believe that the fair and sustainable business model needs to consider those participants, especially in the future.
We'll talk about that in just a second. Now, he says data and integrations will enable data-driven, more flexible and highly automated supply chains. Forto is a digital solution to better manage a company's supply chain. On their platform, you can, for example, compare the prices for rail, air, and sea freight and combine the modes of transport individually. Their customers save on average 30% of administrative effort and 15% of the total cost per transport. Our panelist drives the strategic business initiatives for Forto. And yeah, you also draw a lot of experience because you were at McKinsey before. So Dr. Fabian Struck, Executive Vice President Strategy at Forto. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Fabian, right now, it's one thing to save money on transporting goods from A to B, but it's also necessary to get the goods from A to B because of the supply chain crisis. How much has your business model changed through that?
Our business model has actually not really changed. I think it was even accelerated in the last 1.5 years. So when we sometimes make jokes of ourselves and think, okay, what are we actually doing? And we come to that metaphor saying we want to help logistics professionals to reduce their blood pressure, the stress that they're experiencing in their daily life. Yeah? And we want to enable them and put them back in control. And for that, we use data and technology. And many of you know in the last 1.5 years, there was a ship in the Suez Channel all of a sudden. If you look at now Shanghai port, there's over 500 ships waiting there. So disruptions and changes in the actual physical infrastructure have been a little bit a new normal in the last 1.5 years. And I think with that also the need and the demand on the customer side to now take the chance to really solve these problems. And by solving, I really mean doing it now and not waiting, maybe we do it in 2-3 years, has really accelerated our business model.
I've been in discussions with a lot of supply chain managers worldwide, and they have told me that one of their biggest challenge is that they don't know where their parcel is when, for example, they want to deliver it from China, because the containers are not tracked. When will that change? Also for DPD, for example, what's the challenge there?
So actually, we still talk about supply chains and think of a kind of a linear thing which happens quite regularly without disruption and with little variation. But it's actually, just as pointed out in all our discussions before, disruption is normal, and what we thought was possible is not a kind of a valid threshold anymore. So in my opinion, we need to think of a demand network or demand networks instead of linear supply chains. And it's actually absolutely right. We need to be in better control of end-to-end performance, end-to-end data, and this is something which DPD and DPD Group are actually aiming on to increase our scope, not only the last mile, but actually to decrease complexity for our customers and ease, likewise, with those dealing with no assets, with being a leading logistics provider in offering part of the supply chain physically, but enhancing and increasing our reach within the supply chain.
Professor Schocke, how do you see that? I mean, you said that there's going to be a massive increase, even now in the future, in transportation. Or an increase, let's call it.
Yes, it's twofold. On one hand, of course, we have an increase in transportation. I just told you 10% growth rate concerning the parcel volume in Germany, for example. On the other hand, we are still in logistics. We are still talking about data which is provided just by one company. But we have to think across or at the entire supply chain across companies. And it's a perfect service from DPT, for example, to offer us to see where is our parcel. But do we really know where it's in the warehouse before you get it? And if we do not just look at the parcel shipment process, if we look in the entire supply chain, you just mentioned it, where is my container right now? That's a big problem. Of course, there are sensors available which could track also containers. But it's not the state of the art right now used in the industry.
And also, are the clients willing to pay for this extra service?
That's the third aspect.
And also, you mentioned the word fairness. How much are your customers willing to pay for fairness and a nice smile?
That's a good question. Well, we put fairness actually in the core of our mission at Cito. Not because in first place we thought, okay, what would customer be able to and open and willing to pay for that? We think that, looking at the time-critical business, we see that there's more sub-supplier systems, more complex systems, and the actual supplier who's doing the delivery gets more and more tore off of the customer itself. And we see technology as one very good solution to have a better service for the paying customer. But we also see this as a great opportunity to also help the transport partners, right? And I mean the executing transport partners, those ones who are really doing the delivery. And that's the kind of aim we have with fairness, to empower also the transport partners to get directly connected to the customers. But that's why we are talking about the importance of fairness in our business model, and we see it also as an important part for a sustainable business model in the future.
And Fabian, do you also see a similar problem to the transport of people, that platforms versus OEMs? Is there a willingness to open up data, for example, so that there could be apps that could track all different sorts of deliveries?
Yeah, I think there's in the last 4 or 5 years an increasing trend. I would not only say for data, but actually also for collaboration within the industry. There was 4 years ago actually many parties not being even able to share that data, even if they would love to. And now there's players, the big carriers, the airlines, digitizing their processes more and also making it, new players like us even easier with them, collaborating with them, because that is also what many of them see as the way of collaboration in the future.
But how much are you willing to give up from your expertise, from your data, from your knowledge? I mean, you really have to open up to startups, for example. It would be difficult.
Of course, it's difficult. Whenever it's kind of something behind it, it's difficult. Otherwise, it would have been done already. So one of the challenges is that big companies today still think very divisional when it comes to supply chain costs. And that goes along again with instead thinking of demand networks. But today, this is all a push principle from the manufacturers. They think in divisions. They try to optimize cost for certain segments of transport, but not end to end. And it's been already said, like holistic views. I'm always shy in these huge words, but we need to actually look at it end to end, and we need to have a certain kind of collaboration. And I need to refer to one aspect being made before. So the last mile is not broken, but it's stretched sometimes to its limits. And it's certainly not scalable with the challenges we all foresee in the future, in particular not in urban areas.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as the solution to this broken last mile, as Professor Hermann put it?
Yeah. One aspect is we have increasing traffic. We mentioned it in the earlier session. We heard it. The second aspect is more transport volume. And we have had a lot of congestion here in front of the building when we arrived here. The problem is that everybody wants to use the street. And one project we had in Frankfurt, for example, was to use the tram for cargo transport. That was one aspect. Hopefully this will fulfill this year and we get a tram which could ship cargo in Frankfurt.
You even use trams for vaccination in Frankfurt. You're
Yes,
using trams for everything.
We do everything. This could be one aspect to put cargo or goods away from the street onto the rail, for example. That could be one aspect. One thing which is not well known within the public is that all the trucks, DPD for example, are sending out to Berlin, for example, they are full, so you can't combine it. You can't tell the 1,000 trucks for Berlin from DPD and the competitors, we just have 500 instead of this. That's not possible, and this has to be learned by the public. So we have certain fields in transportation which are already full of goods, and to share it makes no sense, but in different aspects it might make sense.
Maybe you could also talk about this last mile transportation. Couldn't it be possible that you have robots that go out of collect the parcel and then go into the third floor and deliver it in front of my door? Is that something very, very futuristic?
Oh, that's hard to evaluate. I would say for me, first of all, we are not like that much into this last mile delivery because we have business customers who have probably most of the time their own facilities and sites, so that's easier for us. We don't have to walk up the third, fourth floor with a lot of parcels, which is really a tough job, I have to say, and huge respect for the people that do that. So of course you can imagine a lot of things. Of course we can imagine automated driven cars. I mean, we are belonging to a car manufacturer, our company, to 100%. And one of the goals is to develop autonomous driving vehicles, not only for mobility for people, but also of course for transports. And I think the best way is not only to imagine the future, but to develop it, kind of, right? And to start off. We see that the drivers have a lot of side topics. It's not only about the car that they're driving back and forth, the parcels. It's also about going up the floor, having a signature, having a handover, and maybe having a talk. That would be nice, right, with the customers. We talked also about this. And then the question is, okay, let's start somewhere and let's test out these things and let's do it. That's, I guess, the important part that should not be forgotten, that, when you think of things in the future, the best way is to start off and have kind of this lean approach. It's a little bit also a burnt word, but yeah. I mean that's how it works.
Yeah. How much automation do you see in delivery?
I think delivery has for me two components. The one is the automation about which we talked, where there's probably room to improve that. I personally don't believe in the robots coming up the stairs.
They
But
can
I
take the elevator if they want.
yeah, or maybe like that. But in your analogy of the demand chain, I think there's a lot of move of goods, be it small parcels, but also be it big pallets that are not, let's say, initiate by the moment and the place where I really need them. So I don't know how many parcels I personally receive at home that I then, I don't know, unpack and carry somewhere else. And I don't know, bring it to a different person again. Yeah, so is there always a clear need to have exactly these goods at that moment where I, as a consumer, think I need them? Or is there actually even a better way to distribute them at another moment in time? And also going back on the truck side, which are pretty full, I've seen some of these parcel containers being stuffed completely. That's different in other fields of the business. Yeah, so there is, of course, guesstimates on how full a real container is stuffed sometimes, how much air we're actually moving, how much containers are filled by trucks are filled by goods on the one distance versus the other when they do the backhaul. So I think there's a lot of win-win optimization potential in the industry that with rising fuel costs or generally rising energy costs, I think also the topic of sustainability will become even more important for us.
Yeah, and of course, the more you optimize, the more sustainable it will be, and the fuller the truck is, the more sustainable it is. We heard just before with the transportation of people that you would need also from the political side, you would need some like push. How much is that true also here? Could there be a Mannheim where you test things out, as we mentioned before?
Well, I hope there are a couple of those, but mind you. So I started off my career in infrastructure, actually, in airports. So, and I went through a public process to actually get a runway approved and build it. And I can tell you, don't wait for any government in Germany because you wouldn't know which one is responsible. Because we are in a federal state and there will be no federal minister of transport who will actually do the job for us. What I say in us is the industry, a German, a European industry and industry leaders to actually have less conversation and start with a little more action. Because we need to execute, because all what we discuss now, we discuss for many, many years, and we need to come up with better solutions than they are today. And actually the coincidence of technological developments enables so many collaborative tools which we actually need to start doing and less talking. And in Germany, it's not only the federal states, it's the cities. The most legislative initiatives come from communities and municipalities. So it's way more granular than a federal government who would decide on something like that. And yes, we need to come up with private initiatives of partners to actually start doing things because the ideas on the table, brilliant minds across, we need to start doing because there are companies out there who can afford to actually do it themselves. And we need to take care that the next bunch of key technologies are not only being made, provided, and delivered in China or in the US. We need some German and some European leading-edge solutions for the future.
Yeah, Professor Schocker, how much willingness do you see from politicians to start moving also in this field, which is probably a little bit hard to imagine for them because they can imagine the movement of people, the mobility of people, but not the mobility of goods. So it must be even tougher to get a breakthrough.
Yeah, I fully agree what you just said. Especially the city authorities are in the lead from my perspective. We are here right now at Berlin. There are a couple of projects on the last mile. You had this common hub close by where we are right now. That's a big initiative, but you stopped whenever the funding was stopped. That is one problem. But if the political willingness is there, then companies could proceed with this. And You know, I come from Frankfurt. We just took part at the orchestration of a new city logistics concept, but we learned from interviews, for example, city logistics is more than just parcel delivery. For example, we have a big skyscraper, the only skyline in Germany, in Frankfurt, and whenever they are broken down, we have 1,000 trucks a day in the city because the skyscrapers are on the western part of Frankfurt and the harbor is on the eastern side. They have to go through the city. We also have to find solutions for that, and and especially the city authorities have to learn that logistics is part of a city, and the entire community has to learn, or all people have to learn, logistics has a value and they have to pay for it.
Now, you have been with Volkswagen before you were also the founder of Zito, but so you know a little bit about the administrative structure of big corporations, but also of the communes, etc. How depressive also for you is it that there are so many limitations also from politics?
Well, I'm not depressive. I'm quite optimistic, I have to say. I would agree we have to do a lot. I also see pressure a lot from of course, other countries and other regions. We have to get moving, especially in the digital sector. I think it's completely possible to have innovations in Germany and in general. I think the main point is you have to do something and not talk too much. You have to start doing those things. I have to say I've seen at Volkswagen the people mobility side a lot and then moved into the transport sector. And I would say the transport sector itself is quite much focused on efficiency by themselves. So our large corporates, I mean, that's one of the main factors of logistics, efficiency. So I'm not sure if it really needs pressure by the government that those companies get moving, because they get pressure also from companies in other regions of the world, right? This is a global market. And I think we see also great examples in Germany with unicorns. So it's absolutely possible. I think the most important thing is start doing.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is necessary to actually move and get a move on?
I think courage. Courage to make mistakes along that journey. Courage to sometimes maybe take decisions that are not absolutely well funded as they should be. And then also learning very quickly. I think I had the pleasure now to experience it in the last years with Forto. And one of the things is learn fast. And with the courage and learning fast, companies will be able to find solutions, even if they think there was no solution for the last 20, 50, or even 100 years when we think about shipping and international trade. So in the end, if all the parties, and I think there are great parties on the table, very young companies, very old companies, great minds, if we all bring a little bit of courage to the table and say, okay, we're going to get this right now, and maybe invent it then from here, I think we have great chance to get it right.
I would like to add one dimension. Two colleagues of mine from Kuhn Logistics University, they published a report on emissions, or what we should do in the logistics industry to fulfill our goals concerning the emissions in a couple of years. And approximately 10 factors. And one was all trucks are not allowed to consume more than 50% of current usage. Instead of 30 liters per 100 kilometers, just 15. And that shows the dimension we are talking about. And of course, these empty runs and so on and so on and so on. So we just can't keep with small solutions in a certain city. We have to think big.
Okay, so legislation can actually be an innovator, you're saying. So we have one question from the audience. How can MAS and TAS benefit from each other? Whoever would like to.
Capacity is a capacity. And I think for a lot of transportation modes, we already see it, even in the traditional way, that capacities are shared. And I think that's one of the side discussions we had before. We should start putting in capacities of autonomous or electrical vehicles. And by the way, I'm a strong believer in, like I said before, different concepts of engines than only electricity. But once we put capacities out there, we find smart solutions. We already figured out at the beginning that trams are probably nowadays the Swiss Army knife of urban transportation. But seriously, I think we need to put capacity out there and then find ways how to utilize it best for both means of transportation.
Mm-hmm. So you think the startup idea that you use cargo at night and for people on daytime could be something for the future as well?
It's shared economy, more or less. Yeah, you have one resource you use twice a day. Why not?
I mean, it's the same with airplanes, right?
Mm. Yeah.
I mean, it's actually then the asset and how to utilize the asset, but also how to utilize the streets in the best way. And I don't see that there's a natural split that needs to be there. So why not?
I think adding to this, a mobility as a service for a consumer, I think also on our transportation side, we can learn a lot from how consumers adapt to new behaviors. They are quite often significantly faster than businesses, adopting, I don't know, the way they order, the way they manage, the way they track and follow. So I think we as, so to say, task group, we can definitely also learn from the consumers.
And yeah, please.
Sorry, I mean, you said it, like you have to be courageous, you have to think in innovations, and I don't think it makes sense to set yourself any boundaries in anything and say like, hey, we always do it like this and this. We always should think of what's the best way forward. And I don't think that's good saying like, oh no, we're going to skip it, or is it the right approach, or yes or not. This could change over time.
And also to you, the last round. One wish for the next months to come. What would it be in order to solve some problems in the logistics area?
It's all about consumption, really. And I think we're talking a lot about urban mobility. When we talk about mobility as a service, we talk a lot about urban mobility, urban solutions, because there's no one-size-fits-all for the countryside, likewise for urban areas. So I think we need to take the people in urban areas on a journey and kind of create a picture what a future meaning of life in cities, in lovely cities like Berlin might look like. What are the benefits and what are the costs? And work our solutions for integrated service points where you can consolidate B2C shipments instead of carrying it 4 stories high in a building and the consignee is not home. So there's a lot of out-of-home options which you could combine with other community services, which are projects already running. We need to convince people. We need to have a certain kind of re-socialization of the consignee that those things are actually of value to them. And I think you can, but we need to think about it differently, and we need to take the consignee, the customer, the consumption itself into the equation.
Okay, I always order and then the delivery is for free. So
You're right. Part of the problem.
Professor Schocke.
I would like to link my last thought to the podium before concerning people moving, more or less. I would be happy if, the traffic on the road is 70% of individual use cars from us. And I would love if all the people who go back from home office into their offices, like this building right now, if they wouldn't use their own car, but use all kind of different modes, like a bus, a tram, or a bike, or whatever, then we have enough space on the streets for logistics.
Mm-hmm. A little bit more modesty as well, as I just had an interview with the president, the former president of Germany, Gauck. He says we have to be a bit more modest. What's your wish?
I'm not a big fan of those wishes, but if I want to make a wish to the round and everybody who sees this, is that give your delivery guy who brings your parcel a smile next time, and just take attention of him. Like, he's doing a great job and a tough job. And somehow we had the feeling that those people are kind of ignored, right? Common standard. But these are people like you and me with a lot of needs, and just take attention of that.
And I always see that, for example, when you order a taxi nowadays or other services, it's much easier to tip them. Maybe you should invent tips as well for these guys. You do. perfect. Okay, but you already had your wish, so.
Simply no major disruptions. No, but yeah, I think the last years have also shown that we shouldn't take everything for granted, especially when it comes to the availability of goods for all of us, be it as a parcel, be it for our supply chains. And I think if we take that topic in terms of good provision to us as something that we'll consume later on, more serious, and also act more careful in that regard, I think that would be my wish.
Perfect. Thank you very much to the whole panel. It was very interesting and lively. Fabian, Gregor, Professor Schocke, and Eric, thank you very much. And I'm very glad that you mentioned that there is no split needed between goods and people panels. Didn't he? Federico, please join me. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. It was great. Thank you very much.
So let's hear what our expert has to say about this.
I'm back. With, again, paper full
analytics and
written analytics, structured, to the point. Can I start with something that, in my opinion, is important as a takeaway? Thank you, God, the last mile is not broken, it's only stretched. This is the first takeaway of the discussion that I enjoyed. But please let me be serious and then also frame the discussion again, starting from something that was probably not stated, but really transparent during the discussion. Now and 30 minutes ago. Mobility and transportations are basic needs for the whole humankind, and I'm sure they're going to stay. So the idea is to experience an evolution and a transformation instead of a substitution, because mobility and transportation are central basic needs for us all. So let's move along with my personal list of takeaways in terms of content pills. An important one is coming actually at the beginning of the panel discussion, when we said that the increase of attack time in terms of delivery is positive for the customer. Yes, this is true, but it creates bottleneck in terms of utilization of assets and infrastructure. So in this regard, it's necessary again to think in a different way in terms of disruptive synergy and sharing to avoid the probable bottleneck. You give me the possibility for state a couple of them more. The next one is the broad definition of sustainability. At the beginning, this evening, we were talking about sustainability in terms of CO2 saving. Now we had a discussion about sustainability, not only in ecological term, but also in social sustainability term, which in my understanding is particularly important. And in this regard is linked also how can we organize the last mile in terms of social sustainable organizational processes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Point number 4, again, the fil rouge between the first panel and the second one. Availability of data and transparency is the key to create a better service and to have a real customer orientation. And therefore, the whole logic of having the possibility to share data and consequently the synergic necessary future role between private companies and this legislator, so the public and the private. You stressed many times the logic of seeing public and private together in order to shape the ecosystem for mobility and transportation. I do agree you were right, strongly, and therefore, also from my point of view, this is a key takeaway. That said, this is not enough, because private company, they have to see and understand where to make money. Or in a more elegant way to frame it, we have to identify the profit pools. And therefore, again, the final takeaway is where are the profit pools, the future profit pool in the framework of the layer of mobility and transportation that a company can aim. Last, if you allow me, we are going to see a different world in which there is a lot of cooperation and competition. So a competition world, a kind of a hybrid new way of making partnering and also compete. And probably a sort of fight and competition, not among companies or assets, but among platforms. So probably the future of mobility, the future of transportation will be framed in a sort of competition among platforms. So that said, for companies, for people that are taking part of the Mobility Launch number 2.0 from remote, the 4 key takeaways. So first, you have to think in strategic layer model. Second, you have to identify your actual and future profit pool and define if there is a danger to lose them or how can you gain new profit pool in the layer map. Third, do you have a data strategy? And if not, be fast and try to have a data strategy because this is the key element to create integrated mobility. And if you allowed me to be extremely provocative this evening, so the last appel, in the future, we are not going to see companies that are managed in terms of return on investment or return on sales, but probably, let me be provocative, in terms of return of data. How can create profit with utilization of data? And last but not least, I'm going to criticize you. You said, how can we not be ambitionate? How can we, let's say, not aim to a big future? I disagree strongly. I think the goal is to be extremely ambitionate. Think big, think fast, think easy, avoid PowerPoint, and start to deploy.
Okay, so you think that I want the status quo?
I was trying to provoke you in adopting an extremely positive and future-oriented attitude.
Are you going back home by truck now?
No, I'm using...
On the back of the truck? Or?
No. I use, obviously, the assets related to personal mobility because they are great. That said, I'm also using integrated mobility. With one click, I can go door to door from my home in Munich to my office in Stuttgart without having any trouble, so integrated. And I think the utilization of personal mobility possibilities in terms of Porsche cars, but also in the integrated world in big cities is the key. It's the key for a happy future.
You know that we're both in Munich soon, and if you don't need your Porsche anymore, you know where to bring it.
I will pick you up.
Thank you very much, Federico. It's been a great pleasure.
Yes.
And also to, I would say, the technical crew of Macondo. Thank you very much for your great job.
Make the bridging to the next appointment.
Absolutely.
So, thank you very much to all the participants. It was a great journey. I learned very much. Second, a big thank you, a really warm thank you to the keynote speakers and the participants to the panel. And let's make the cliffhanger. We are going to see us again in October with the 3rd mobility launch.
Exactly, and then it will be about autonomous driving and the impact on the traffic. And maybe after that, we will all be driving home in autonomous vehicles, but we'll see.
We have a lot of ideas.
October will be the next, so thank you very much for joining us. Have a nice evening, and goodbye. See you then.
Bye-bye.